Chapter 1. In the Mission, Kelowna, BC. Wednesday, one day later, from her last case. Doreen sat curled on the couch. All she had wanted was 3 days. 3 days of peace and quiet. Was that in the cards? She doubted it. As much as she desperately wanted to be out of the limelight and rejoice in the peace and quiet of living in her Nan's house, she had a bad feeling in her gut. Her brood was sedate, even Goliath asleep on the other end of the couch with Mugs, all her furry or feathered babies obviously understanding how Doreen really needed that from them at this time. Thaddeus rubbed his beak along her cheek, then closed his eyes, happy to just sit on her shoulder. Unfortunately, she found no peace or quiet outside her home, not yet today, but it was early morning, and not for the last 2 days for sure. The reporters were still at her door, even at this hour. The newspaper journalists were still writing articles about how Doreen had helped solve the decades-old cold case of Betty Miles's death, and Nan and her cronies were still enjoying being the center of attention by giving numerous interviews, supposedly on Doreen's behalf. Doreen had told Nan how that was totally fine, just happy that Nan had found something other than her illegal betting activities to bring excitement to her life. Indeed, Nan glowed with it. But as for Doreen, she wanted to be left alone. At that thought, her phone chimed. She glanced at her cell and groaned. But she hit the talk button anyway. "You better have a good reason for bothering me, Mac." She slid farther down on the couch until her head rested on the armrest. Thaddeus shifted his position, but refused to give up his spot on her shoulder. "I figured for sure that by now you'd be all pepped up, raring to go," he said. She could detect the worry in his voice and had to smile. "I am, and yet I'm not. Have you any idea how deep the lineup of reporters is outside my front door? I know this is a small town, but it seems like the news hit the wires all the way across the country." "You're a celebrity," he said, laughing. His voice softened. "But no, that's not an easy position to be in." "I didn't murder anybody," she exclaimed, sitting up straight to peek through the curtains. "Why are they haunting me?" Thaddeus squawked, shot her a disgusted look when she disturbed his nap on her shoulder, hopped up to the back of the couch, then he wandered over a few steps and proceeded to close his eyes again. "It's like everybody thinks I'm the one who's done something wrong," she said, reaching out to pet Mugs, then stroke her fingers across Goliath's back. "Remember the last time?" he asked. "This too will blow over." "Sure, but every time I find a new body," she said in exasperation, "they look at me as if I had something to do with it." "Not that you had something to do with the making of the dead bodies," he corrected, his light humor sliding through his voice, "but that your arrival precipitated all this. Or maybe you have some sort of psychic ability. You don't, do you?" His voice held a curious note to it. She chuckled at his tone. "I think by now both you and I would know if I did." "Well, you need something to cheer you up. What have you got for me?" She stood, walking over to peer through the round window on the front door. Instantly, camera flashes went off. She stepped back and walked toward the kitchen. "Have you got a nice puzzle for me to work on?" "You mean, like another case?" "It would get me out of the dumps." Her tone turned crafty. "You know how I like a good puzzle." "You could pick up some jigsaw puzzles," he exclaimed. "That's a much safer hobby. Murderous puzzles are much more fun." She chuckled, knowing he'd hate her answer. "And much more dangerous," he snapped. "You could have been killed last time." She shrugged. "You live and you die. At least I'd be doing something I wanted to do." "Solving cold cases?" She grinned, hearing the hesitation in his voice. "You have another cold case you're looking into, don't you?" Silence. For the first time since she had awakened before dawn today, her boredom and sense of a dark cloud hanging over her almost lifted. "It's not my fault this town is a den of iniquity," she stated. "Just think of all the nastiness hidden here for so long." She could feel that same sense of excitement surging through her when delving into Mac's cold cases. "Are you going to tell me the details?" "No," he said, no hesitation in his voice this time. "And why not?" She waited. If he wanted to play a waiting game, that was no problem. She could play that game too. Finally, he said, "It's not really a priority." "Maybe not to you," she said. "Cold cases are a priority to the families." "I didn't say a death was involved." "That would be even better," she said. "Then I wouldn't trip over any more bodies, at least not right away." "I'd be totally okay if you wouldn't trip over any more anytime," he said. "Suits me," she said. "I'm okay to not find dead bodies ever again. Besides, it's not a cold case I wanted to talk to you about. I'll think about that first." "Damn." She let out a heavy sigh. "So what is it then?" "I was talking to the city council. They want to redo the big sign with the garden as you enter the city limits. You know, the Welcome to Kelowna sign, surrounded by flower beds?" "Yeah, mostly begonias, I think," she said. "At least one of the rings around the sign are begonias." "Ah," he said. "I'd be happy not to see any more of those anytime soon." She nodded. "They're nice to look after, and they don't grow too crazy outside, so they don't need a ton of maintenance. They're easy for large gardens and make great borders or plots." At the word plot, she winced. He chuckled. "I can see that having you around will be a constant reminder of dead things and everything associated with them." "Maybe. And what about the city council? What were you talking to them about?" Her mind zinged to her ever-dwindling pile of money, and she was deeply concerned about it. "Hope it's important. And if it involves money for me, the answer is yes." He chuckled. "You don't even know what it could entail." "Doesn't matter," she said. "I'm about out of the money I found in Nan's pockets before donating and trying to resell some of her unwanted clothes. Which means I'll be diving into that little bit of savings I have." "And the gardening you did at my mom's place? That'll be a regular thing, if you're okay with that." "I am absolutely okay with that," she said. "What you pay me will put food on my table." "Speaking of food," he said. "Did you turn on the new stove?" She pivoted and walked out of the kitchen. "What stove?" He sighed. "The stove you paid $100 to replace. A lot of people went to a lot of trouble to make sure you had something safe to cook on." "There's the trick," she said, "the word cook. I'll tell you what. How about this Sunday, I bring over the fixings for something simple for breakfast or lunch, and I'll show you how to cook it." "Simple would be like eggs," she said, "and I highly doubt you want eggs for lunch, do you?" "Not an issue for me. I love eggs anytime," he said. "Don't you know how to cook eggs?" She pulled the cell from her ear so she could glare at the blank screen. Okay, he said. "Stop glaring at me." She gasped. "How did you know I was glaring at you?" "I could hear it in the heavy silence of the phone's speaker," he said dryly. "And eggs are easy. How about we do omelets? They are a little more substantial than plain eggs." Her mind filled with the soft, fluffy omelets her chef used to make for her. "With spinach and caviar and Gruyere?" Mac replied with that heavy silence again. "Oh. Okay, so what do your omelets normally contain?" she asked. "Well, spinach is one possible ingredient," he said, "but anything I have on hand. Like bacon, ham, leftover meat. You can put veggies in it if you want." His tone said he really didn't see the point. "Meat and eggs are a perfect combo. Plus cheese." "Well, ham and cheese omelets are good too," she said. "Can we add mushrooms?" "Sure," he said. "We can sauté a few mushrooms. So, are you up for a cooking lesson?" "Yes," she said slowly. But she needed to ask him something, and it was kind of embarrassing. "Speak up," he said in that long drawn-out sighing way of his. As if he knew she was making a big deal out of nothing, but needed to get it out first. "Am I paying you for it?" she asked in a rush. He laughed. "No, you're not paying me for a cooking lesson. Not with money, not with gardening work, not with bartering or any other method." She beamed. "In that case, I'm looking forward to cooking lesson number 1 coming up. Omelets it is. I'll bring the ingredients. You'll write down everything I do, okay?" "Okay. And on Tuesday you'll repeat the menu on your own," he said. "You'll take a picture and send the final results to me, so I can see how you did." She chuckled. "Probably better if you come back and watch me make it the second time, and then you can taste the results." "Done," he said. She frowned suspiciously, wondering if he hadn't planned on that in the first place. "So you need to bring ingredients for 2 meals," she said swiftly. He howled with laughter. "You know what? You might not know how to cook, but you sure know how to negotiate a deal." And on that note, he hung up. She grinned to herself until she realized he hadn't told her all about the city's welcome garden, or about the cold case. She called him back, but he didn't answer. Then she sent him a text. "What about the city?" He sent her a map and a handout with his return text. "They're looking for suggestions about what to put in these 2 beds." She walked to her laptop, turned it on, and transferred the image and the PDF on her phone to her computer. There was the sign, "Welcome to Kelowna." She could see the mature plantings around it. And the indicated beds were on each side of the sign. Suggestions for what? Types of flowers, why those flowers, money as in a guesstimate for the cost. "I haven't a clue on the money," she typed. "And even if I do tell them what I would do, what's that got to do with anything? They're looking for bids. The winning bid gets to do the job and to make the money." She perked up when she heard that. Then she opened the PDF and read the 1-page document. "Okay, but it says to submit this by midnight tomorrow night." "Yeah," he replied. "That's why I called you earlier this morning. So get at it."